we are having a movie premiere. But one thing I've always understood about creatives is that whether we are in movie, in music, in literature, in dance, in architecture, in fashion, all of us, whether we know it or not, we are actually engaged in the technology of storytelling. How are you seeing, the possible interaction, between all the different media that we all use? Where are we currently, and where can we go, at least especially from this moment?
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I think it's a really exciting moment to be Black, to be African, and to be Yoruba. Because I just want to start in terms of, for us to be at the Museum of Yoruba Culture and History, where we know that Yoruba is one of the most studied culture of Africa in the world. And we have to take that seriously, that the world study us is whether we study ourselves and whether we think what we do is important or whether our history is important. People who are doing mathematics and computation, they look at Yoruba, they look at Ifa, and they look at the mathematical elements of Ifa, right? As these are deep philosophical and very deeply scientific stuff, and we have to take it seriously. So I think where we are at this moment in time is that we are seeing a convergence of whether it's the literary culture, whether it's the musical, whether it's theater and cinema that we're here to celebrate tonight. We're seeing all of these conversions, and people across Nigeria and across the Black world are beginning to take that seriously for themselves. We are telling our own stories. But for me, I think it is not enough that we tell our own stories. We have to own the means of telling that story. We can do films, we can do cinemas and all of that stuff. But if we don't own the infrastructure for doing so, somebody else is going to determine whether we can or cannot produce this film. So you may do your film, and so we have to rely on Netflix to do it. If Netflix decide today this film is not in vogue, it's not what we need, then we have nowhere to go. We are back to NTA, and we know all of what that means and stuff. So I think what is crucial is, as we're telling our own stories, we also have to take cognizance of the importance of building the infrastructure, or what I call the infrastructure of the imagination. We have to build the infrastructure alongside the telling story, because the telling stories is one thing. The owning the means of production of telling that story, they're two separate things. So we have to be cognizant of that. And I'm very much, as a person, very much interested in curating stories, but also owning the means of production. Those two things is how do we combine them together.
Beautiful, and I think that was why when I was mentioning you, I say you're also an entrepreneur, and I'll come to our brother Master Yibo, who has become a very popular person, doing something that many people of our generation don't even think that you can actually become viral doing such things. And I just want to kind of latch on this idea of owning the platform. I mean, we all see that now you're going to be on DSTV. Before, it was going to be the other way around. And now, it's just amazing how people all by themselves start their own platform, and the mainstream platforms start running after them afterwards. So I want you to just tell us, because when you were being introduced now, they introduced many things. But many people online think you are a content creator. But me, I know that it was a strategy. So can you just tell us something about that strategy, and how, now that we've gotten to this point, we're taking not just ownership, but also cognizance of the ways at which we can do this thing that can sound cool, but at the same time, it's completely your time. Please tell us about that experience.
If you go, ó dàbí pé a máa lò bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o pẹ̀lú bí o ẹ faramọ́ ni o bóyá ká dẹ̀ wúgbù fọ̀ tó máa bá wa.
Ẹ máa wọ ìwú ọgbọ́ Yorùbá. Ó dára ní ìgbọ́ Yorùbá. Yàrá yìí tá bá ti wọnú ẹni kan tó máa ń ṣe sẹ́yìn bọ́dé máa gbọ́ Yorùbá.
Ó máa gbọ́ Yorùbá, a dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run. Lẹ́yìn Ọlọ́run ni ọba mi ọlọ́pọlọ tí ń fọpọlọ fẹ́ni tó ń fọpọlọ lọ́pọlọ nígbà tẹ́ni tó ń wọ́pọlọ bá wọ́pọlọ wá sílé ọlọ́pọlọ tí í ṣe àgbàlagbà mi Elédùmarè tí ń gbé náà ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ọpọlọ fọpọlọ tọrọ fẹ́ni tó ń fọpọlọ lọ́pọlọ lẹ́yìn Ọlọ́run èmi olùkọ́ ni mí, olùkọ́ èdè Yorùbá ni mí. Mi ò kí ń ṣe ẹni tí ó ń gbé mi ní àwọn ẹni ní káàkiri àgbáyé. Mo ní àwọn tí mò ń kọ́ ní Yale, Harvard, Clemson, àwọn ilé ẹ̀kọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn mò ń kọ́ wọn. Ṣùgbọ́n mo wá wò pé báwo la ṣe máa ṣe tó jẹ́ wípé wákàtí 16 ni mo ní lọ́jọ́ kan láti kọ́ àwọn èèyàn ní èdè Yorùbá. Ṣùgbọ́n mo fẹ́ kọ́ èèyàn púpọ̀. Ọ̀nà wo ni mo wá máa gbé gbà láti lè rí pé mo kọ́ àwọn èèyàn púpọ̀? Mi ò lè kọ́kọ́ já pátápátá mo lo mi ò lè pínra mi. Wákàtí 18 ni mo máa fi ń jókòó sínú yàrá ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ mi ní ọjọ́ kan. Màá fi wákàtí 2 sùn. Ìgbà tí mo rí pé ó fẹ́ máa di pé ó ti fẹ́ máa rẹra, mo dínkù díẹ̀. Àwọn èèyàn tún wá pé wọ́n fẹ́ wá kọ́ èdè Yorùbá. Mo wá wò pé kí la máa ṣe. Òun ló bí Másọ̀yìnbó. Mo ń ṣe fún àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ mi láti lè jẹ́ kí wọ́n lè gbọ́ èdè Yorùbá dáadáa. Akọni èmi àti ẹni tó ń bá mi ṣiṣẹ́ ó yá jókòó jẹ́ ká fi ṣeré. Mo fi ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ mi mo fi ṣe wọ́n ní mo fẹ́ràn ẹ̀, mo fi sí orí ayélujára. Ìgbà tó yá mo ní ó yá èló náà ń ta àwọn ẹ̀rọ ayàwòrán wọ̀nyí gan, ó yá jẹ́ ká rà á. Ìdí tá fi ṣe Másọ̀yìnbó ni láti lè jẹ́ kí n jẹ́ olùkọ́ fún àwọn tí wọ́n lè wá sí yàrá ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ mi. Kì í ṣe láti di ìlúmọ̀ọ́ká àbí láti èmi mo ríra mi bí olùkọ́ èdè Yorùbá. Nítorí èdè àti àṣà Yorùbá jẹ mí lógún gan. Nǹkan tá wáyé láàyè. Mi ò mọ tààtà, mi ò mọ gítà, mi ò méré ṣe. Nǹkan kan tí mo mọ̀ ṣe ní Yorùbá. Màá wá ṣe bíi pé ẹni mi ò ní ṣe rí. Àti wípé ìbádíje mi ó jẹ mọ́ Yorùbá kì í ṣe pẹ̀lú èèyàn. Nígbà tí a wá wo ìtàn, kí ni ìtàn? Tí nǹkan bá tàn, kí ló túmọ̀ sí? Ó tàn, kí ló túmọ̀ sí? Spread. Tàn, ó túmọ̀ sí stranded. Tàn, ó túmọ̀ sí deceit. Ìdí nìyẹn wá ní má tàn mí o. Mi ò mọ̀ bí kankan ní ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà o, má tàn o. Ìyẹn ni pé I'll be stranded o. Ibẹ̀ láti wá ti rí ìtàn. Ìyẹn ni wípé bàbá sọ ìtàn wa bàbá mi, a máa tàn. Àwọn míì wọ́n wá tàn wá. Àwa tàn.
All right, okay. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n mú láti wọ́n ti fi Yorùbá affect. But ẹ ká wà tá kì í ṣe olùkọ́ ká máa mix ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀. Ká má bàa tàn. Ẹ̀gbọ́n sọ nǹkan kan pa ownership. Mo fẹ́ padà wá sí. Mo fẹ́ ká wo kí ni this kind of incidents of the exit of Netflix. What does it mean to us now going forward? What has been the? I feel like it's timely. I think it's I'm sorry, it's my personal opinion. I think it's a good thing because they've done something to show us that there's something possible. Now, not only with magic film, slap, what's the law? There's a new culture that they brought. How do we, or where do we go from there? Thinking also about the good thing about owning your own platform. Where do we go from there? Or where do you go from there?
Nǹkan tí mo mọ̀ tó dá mi lójú ni pé kí gbogbo ohun tó dé láti ń bẹ. ó dé wá bá wa ni bó bá gbéra tó lóun ń lọ a sì máa bẹ èyí tó wá ṣe kókó jù ní pé ní bíbẹ tá à ń bẹ ohun tóun ti lọ ṣáà wá ní nǹkan jẹ mọ́ ni àbí a máa wá ọ̀nà míì gbà pé bẹ́lẹ̀ ìbá lọ bẹ́ẹ̀ yìí ò ṣe mọ́ ó jẹ́ kéyìí ṣe. So it is not, I don't think it's the end of the world. It is just for us to sit and re-strategize on what is next to do or how to go about it. One thing I've come to realize is nǹkan táwa bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí gbé lárugẹ wọ́n fi tọ́ wa lẹ́nu wò ni òun ni àṣà àti ṣe titi wọn àti báwọn ṣe ń ṣe káwa tó wá jí sí ìtawà bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ṣe ìgbà tá jí wọ́n rí pé kò ń ṣe ṣeréwéré nítorí nígbà tá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí dáta ibẹ̀ láti wá mọ̀ pé ohun tí sista sọ láìpẹ́ pé Yorùbá ni ohun táwọn èèyàn study jù lágbàáyé fíìmù tá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí jù sórí Netflix jẹ́ ká rí bẹ́ẹ̀ pé òótọ́ ni nítorí gbogbo epic tó ń jù bẹ́ẹ̀ ló lọ jáde ní tó túmọ̀ sí pé ayé ń wò wá àwa la sọjí èyí tó ti fi kọ́ wa yẹn ó ti wá wà nínú ẹ̀jẹ̀ ó ti wá settle sínú brain wa tá bá ti wá rí nǹkan míì tó yàtọ̀ sí a kì í fẹ́ gbé lárugẹ àmọ́ nísìnyí táwa náà ti jí níbi oorun tá a sùn para táwa ń try láti dá àwọn èèyàn wa padà níwọ̀n bá wa tá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ṣe epic lílà àwọn èèyàn wa tún complain pé wọn ò mọ̀ ju epic lọ nítorí wípé kí ni ohun tí a ti fi lọ tọ́ra wa ó ti dùn mọ́ wa kọjá àyè ohun tó jẹ́ titi wa àwa dá wa padà sẹ́sẹ́ àárọ̀ nígbà tá bá dára wa padà síbẹ̀ tí ò sí nǹkan míì a rí pé ohun tiwa yẹn tẹ́ni tèkísà ní. So we are back there. No matter how much we want to go to the foreign land or do something foreign, this is us. And then a lot of us, bàbá fẹ́ bímọ ńsìn àwọn èèyàn ó sá lọ lóyìnbó lọ bímọ ni o bàbá wa bí àwọn ọmọ yẹn sọ̀hún èmi ò ní wálé lógún ọdún ẹ sọ fún mi báwo ló ṣe fẹ́ mọ àṣà àti ṣe tàbá wá fẹ́ pé àwa ní ọmọ wa ni ọ̀nà ogológbàjọ ọmọ wa kò ń ṣọmọ wa ó ti dánmọ wọn ihun tó lè fi jọmọ wa ni gbogbo ilé ìta ń ṣe láti máa dá wọn padà sí root nítorí tó bá jókòó tó wo nǹkan tó jọmọ́ títí ẹ bí gbogbo nǹkan sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀jẹ̀ á sọ̀rọ̀ ara á sọ̀rọ̀ fún ẹ pé ibi tó ti wá rè wà dé padà síbẹ̀. So we will keep telling our stories. If it is for nothing, we will keep documenting them and keep keeping them. Someday there will be a way that we will put it on our own platform and people will come for it. Just as we went for them, they would come for it as well.
Nice. Enjoyable. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n wá padà wá bá Adedimeji Bakare. Sherry, one of the things tó ṣe wá tó bá wa gan is the fact that majority of us that one be agbọ́ Yorùbá o but ilé láti kọ́ Yorùbá wa jẹ́ èdè respect èdè ilé and ilé dẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ has very little intellectualization going on there. Wọ́n lè kòwé fún ẹ o kò jẹ́ kó máa túmọ̀ òwe fún ẹ ṣùgbọ́n ilé ẹ̀kọ́ láti ń kọ́ intellectualization. In fact mo gbọ́ pé ní Naija wa yìí when you study Yoruba you can tell me this tó bá máa fi dé masters level English ló máa fi kọ́ ẹ Yorùbá because o ti wá dé level kama think not just language anymore but really reflection. So why I'm saying that is that majority of our books èmi tẹ́ ń wò yìí mo ti ka ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ìwé nípa àṣà àti ìṣe Yorùbá ṣùgbọ́n English ni mo kà wọ́n. Ìwé mélòó ló wà ní èdè Yorùbá nípa àṣà ìṣe àti ìtàn wa? Mi ìtọ́jú kò sí o mélòó compared to in English. So that's where I'm coming to you. Like, what is the landscape like? And where are we? And what is the work that is yet to be done for us to even get to that point where we start to have a good number of intellectual books, not stories, not iton, not proverbs, but intellectual books in Yoruba.
So what you're asking is, we need to develop philosophical work in Yoruba.
Beautiful.
Right? So you're asking, how do we, at the level of PhD, where people are writing in Yoruba, the way a French person would write in French at the PhD level. So for example, if you were to study, it's unthinkable in the West to study philosophy without doing two languages, French or German. To do philosophy, because you have to, either you're in the continental tradition where you have to do the French, so whether you're writing English or not, you have to do French or German. And then obviously you have English. So in my case, when I did my PhD, I didn't want to have to go through French and German. So I registered in a different department, but still doing philosophy, using a French philosopher. Because if I had registered in the philosophy department, I would have to read and write in French. Now you will come to Yoruba, you do a PhD about Yoruba culture, you do IFA, and some people would not even speak Yoruba. It's unthinkable. And that has to change. And that can only change, first and foremost, if people are writing Yoruba and thinking philosophically, because Yoruba is such a sophisticated language, and it has a very sophisticated and well-developed philosophy. So if you're having a body of work like that, then you have publishers. Publishers like me, you have to publish. But in order to publish, you have to know that there's going to be an audience to receive that. And sometimes, for you to publish a book, we have to have governments. That's the reality. For government has to support certain types of books, the production of certain types of books, with the full knowledge that this is not, it doesn't have a commercial imperative. It's a patient capital. It's developmental, it takes time. So even us as a publisher, we know that there's some books that we're going to publish that is likely to make us money. And there's books that would not make us any money, but they're important that they are published because you're thinking about what I call the archival future. You're thinking about the future, the archive that you're resurrecting in your films, right? It's what was created in the present. So anything we do today will become the archive of the future. If we don't do it, if we don't do anything today, there will be nothing. If we don't establish this Yoruba museum, there will be nothing. We will continue to have a European framework where they say Africa has no history, right? And we have no history, supposedly we have no history because the writing of history is seen through text, through the written text. They do not see the artifacts as forms of history. Even though for them, they look at artifacts as history. But when it comes to us, it is memory. So there's a distinction between memory and history, right? So we need to understand those kind of distinctions. But without us allowing it to invade our thoughts, right? Both history and memories are important, and we must collapse it. So the landscape currently is that there needs to be serious work between universities where the scholars are there and make the writing from undergrad level to PhD level. You write it. If you're going to do anything in Yoruba culture, you must study Yoruba. You must understand it, because if you don't understand it, you cannot get the nuances. And I'll give you, just before I close, I'll give you an example. I came to Nigeria to research, I was sitting on the bus in Ojuelegba. I just wanted to kind of experience Lagos. And I was like, this is such a chaotic space. What is going on? Why is Ojuelegba so chaotic? Right? And I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Ojuelegba. So that's my thinking. So I go to Unilag to talk to professors of Yoruba to say, what does Ojuelegba mean? They said, it's the cane beater. I was like, what does that cane beater mean? No, it can't be. So I'm going around. These are scholars who said, so I'm thinking, okay, there must have been a shrine here once upon a time. There must have been. Professors couldn't tell me that Ojuelegba, what the meaning of it.
Legba.
journalists. They couldn't understand that. So I then traced back, and found the shrine of Eshu in Olapapa Road. This is where they moved them when they built the bridge. And so those I think we need to understand why the chaos of a space, the name,
It's connected to
is
history.
connected to the history and all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, people in the, so I spent 24 hours looking at that space and looking at all the different activities that happened in these spaces. We need those kind of nuanced research and time. And it takes time and funding and resources. And
Of how do we continue to bring out images, objects, myth around just one story and recreate different ways of distributing it, from books to museums to creating characters for social media content. How are you guys thinking about all of these possibilities beyond just the cinema as the frame for storytelling?
I think we are heading somewhere. We are going somewhere with all of these things. Collaboration is very good. Nítorí Yorùbá náà ló ti sọ pé igi kan ìdàgbòṣe. Nítorí àwa nílà káyé pé ìtàn wa rè bá a ṣe fẹ́ ṣe rí. Ẹlòmíì nílà káyé pé bí wọ́n bá a ṣe fẹ́ ṣe yìí tó jẹ́ pé sinimá la fẹ́ ṣe sí. Làákàyè bá a ṣe máa gbé kalẹ̀ ní sinimá tẹlòmíì. Títẹlòmíì ni làákàyè bá a ṣe máa tà á nígbà tá a bá gbé sí sinimá tán. So gbogbo ẹ̀ ó ń túmọ̀ sí pé a gbọ́dọ̀ bára ẹni ṣe kí nǹkan lè dán mọ́rán bó ṣe jẹ́ kó dán mọ́rán. Ẹ wá rántí pa ti lọ sọ́nà pé Lisabi yóò ní tán síbí. Àti wò pé Lisabi week ó tún ṣì máa ṣẹlẹ̀. Gbogbo ohun tá a kọ́ pátápátá nínú fíìmù yẹn, gbogbo àwọn ilé Lisabi tá a kọ́ yẹn, a máa rí ẹ̀ náà tiẹ̀ sékòó yìí. Ká máa wá jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn wá from every part of the world to come and see it. Àwa tá a wá kópa nínú fíìmù yẹn náà, a máa wà ń bẹ̀. Ọlọ́yọ̀ á wà ń bẹ̀ bí Ọlọ́yọ̀. Ará Ẹ̀gbá á wà ń bẹ̀ bí Ará Ẹ̀gbá. Òjíṣẹ́ á wà ń bẹ̀. So tí àwọn new generations yìí tán bá wá, kódà kán máa tí ì wo fíìmù yẹn, tán bá wà nínú space yẹn, for people that are in the film to even tell them this was the story, this was how this was what came up at this time. That way, we are equipping them with the necessary things that they need to know about culture, about our history.
Thank you very much. Is there any question? I have one hand here. Is there any other one? I have two there. I have three here. Let's go for those three first.
Adedimeji Kazeem ní orúkọ tèmi láti tẹlifíṣàn ààrẹ fún àwọn Yorùbá. Ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ìgbà tí àwọn tí wọ́n ṣe sinimá tí ẹ̀ka máa ń gbọ́ pé láti kọ ìtàn ìlú, àtúnṣe nípa ìtàn ìlú, àwọn máa ń ní ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ṣòro láti wá gbé sinimá Lisabi kalẹ̀ kí ni o tójú rí lérè fi ni o.
Kò ń tójú rí ṣe díẹ̀ náà nítorí ìtàn ìlú ni. Ọ̀pọ̀ wá sí rèé àsí láyé nígbà tó ṣẹlẹ̀. Kódà àwọn tá a gbọ́ lẹ́nu ẹ̀ náà wọ́n gbọ́ lẹ́nu èèyàn ni. Bí ó ti di àrọ́bá sì ní wọn ni bàbá àtàn ni. So ohun tá a gbọ́ ni. Àmọ́ nígbà tá a fẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ Lisabi agbéra àti kámẹ́rà ó di pálàsì Aláké. A lọ ọbẹ̀, a béèrè. A rí bàbá arúgbó kan bẹ̀ tán sọ oríṣiríṣi fún wa nípa Lisabi, bó ṣe jẹ́, bó ṣe wà, bó ṣe rí. Lẹ́yìn àwa gbéra, a lọ sínú igbó Lisabi ọ̀hún níbi tán ní Lisabi wọlẹ̀ sí Adébẹ̀. Ṣó wọlẹ̀ lóòótọ́ ni? Kí náà bá léèyàn wọlẹ̀, kí ló túmọ̀ sí? Ṣé ó kóra wọnú ilẹ̀ ni? Àbí wọ́n gbẹ́lẹ̀ ó wọlé síbẹ̀ fúnra ẹ̀? Àbí báwo tí ẹ̀ la ṣe fẹ́ sọ? Gbogbo ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ a lọ àgbà àwa jókòó pé bó ṣe ṣẹlẹ̀ ńgbà yẹn rí creative license wà. What can we add to it to make the situation more explainable to people so that they will know the extent of what went wrong at that time? so that ayé ìgbà yẹn àtayé ìsìn, we can merge it together and still not lose the essence of the real story that we are to tell people. So there's some creative license that we went through in the film, had some characters that are not tí ó ṣẹlẹ̀ nígbà yẹn tá fi gba Lisabi ndì pé ohun tó ṣẹlẹ̀ rèé, àmọ́ tá bá tún fi léyìí sí á tún jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn retí rí yìí pé ṣé aburú tó ṣe tán ṣe nígbà yẹn ó lé ó pọ̀ tó yìí àti bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Òun ni a lò tí Lisabi fi di Lisabi. Fún táwa fi wá gbèrò pé ká ṣe Lisabi ni pé èmi fúnra mi ti rí pé a ti ń sọnù láwọn ọgbà kan. Òyìnbó ni bàbá mi nìkan ni mo mọ̀ tó máa ń sọ pé tí n bá bẹ́ẹ̀ sọ Yorùbá má fòyìnbó dá mi lóhùn pẹ̀lú Yorùbá padà. Tó o bá ti délé ẹ̀kọ́ ẹ̀, ibi tẹ́ ti ń kọ́ ilé ẹ̀kọ́ yín, ẹ máa fira yín bá English ní sọ̀rọ̀. Kí n tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí embrace pé Yorùbá yìí lóòótọ́ ohun téèyàn ń dìmú ní ṣiṣẹ́ ni ká má sọnù. A wá ṣe Lisabi nítorí mo rí pé most of even my generation a lè sọ Òyìnbó tó já geere mọ́ o, àbí a lè sọ Yorùbá tó já geere mọ́, Yorùbá dẹ̀ ni wá. So tá bá ní tá ń sọ tó já geere báyìí tó bá dẹ̀ yìí sóyìnbó náà tá tún sọ tó já geere, iyì wa ni, ẹ̀yẹ wa ni. La ṣe ní a ní dẹ́kun àti máa ṣe gbogbo àwọn fíìmù wa ní Yorùbá. Àwọn China ń ṣe ní China, a dẹ̀ máa wò tá máa fẹ́ wò. Gbogbo wa là ń wo India ń ṣe ní India, wọ́n ọ̀dẹ̀ ní sọ èdè míì. A dẹ̀ máa jókòó tì, a dẹ̀ máa wò. So a gbọ́dọ̀ ṣe náà ní Yorùbá bẹ́ẹ̀. Tó bá dójú ẹ̀, wọ́n á gbà tọwọ́ tẹsẹ̀, wọ́n á dẹ̀ máa wà.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká mú ìbéèrè kejì.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So my name is Banke. I'm here with my colleagues from Nollywood. What would you say to other Yoruba filmmakers to encourage them to really lean into the beauty of the language in its purest form? There was a time where people would want to learn how to speak Yoruba and to understand Yoruba, and they will watch Yoruba films from like 10, 15 years ago. If you compare the films then, they're on YouTube, even to now, like Tioluwanile, compare them to now, there's a difference in the type of Yoruba, like the quality of Yoruba that they speak. What would you say to encourage Yoruba filmmakers who might be listening to this, just for them to lean into that and put the real pure Yoruba there, so that people like me, from watching the films that they post now these days, we can learn. Because apart from Lisabi and all the other epics, you won't really find the undiluted Yoruba in these films. People are mixing, they'll speak 10 sentences in English, sprinkle into Yoruba words, and it's like it's a Yoruba film. So what do you have to say to that?
Sorry, before you take it, let's take the other question as well, so that like that we can speak around it together. Where's that other question?
Ẹ ṣe dúpẹ́, orúkọ mi ni ẹja lónìí fún àbẹ̀kẹ́. Ìbéèrè mi lákọ̀ọ́kọ́ kí tó béèrè béèrè, ẹ ọkọ dúpẹ́ pé ẹ ṣe gan ní flọ̀pọ̀ àti gbogbo ohun tí à ń ṣe nípa àṣà wa. Àmọ́ ó máa ń kọ mí lóminú gbà mí tí bá rí wípé bí gbogbo ta ti sọ látàrá náà ni a wà ní àwùjọ ọ̀pọ̀ ńlá ká tó sọ méjì mẹ́ta àti yìí sí èdè Gẹ̀ẹ́sì àwa máa sọ bí pẹ́ẹ́rẹ́ bí pé ilé yìí gangan kọ́ náà forí wa sọlẹ̀ sí. Àwọn tí mo wá fẹ́ béèrè ni pé torí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nínú wa bẹ́yìn ṣe ṣiṣẹ́ takuntakun láti gbé sí ojú fọ́nrán tó tóbi, làwàkọ́ náà ṣe ń gbìyànjú láti máa kọ́ èdè yìí náà àti máa ṣe àwọn ohun tí ó lè túbọ̀ gbé wa lárugẹ lórí YouTube yìí àti gbogbo báyẹn. Àmọ́ mo tún rí i pé láwùjọ wa gan àwọn èèyàn náà ò tún sí ìgbà aṣọ aláṣọ là ń gbà tá a fi ń bora, oúnjẹ olóúnjẹ là ń gbà tá a fi ń yó. Kí nìkan ta tún lè ṣe tá a túbọ̀ tì wá síta dáadáa táwọn èèyàn á fi lè mọ̀ pé àṣà tiwa gan ọba ní àwa fúnra wa. Kò yẹ ká máa tọrọ jẹ ọmọ ẹlẹ́ran, ó yẹ kó máa jẹ egun, kò dẹ̀ yẹ kó tiẹ̀ máa tọrọ egun gan àbí ẹran gan lọ́wọ́ èèyàn míì nígbà tí ìṣàṣàmì egun la ní. Kí nìkan míì ta tún lè ṣe dáadáa bí mo ṣe sọ ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ content ẹgbàmíláyè láti lò yẹn lèmi fẹ́ra mi gan ṣe síta. Àwọn èèyàn wa gan wọn tún tí dọwọ́ bò kán túbọ̀ gbà mọ́ra.
Mo máa padà sọ́dọ̀ Másòyìnbó, ó di ọwọ́ oníkálukú wa ó dọwọ́ ọwọ́ tó sọ̀rọ̀, ó dọwọ́ kó wá wa, nítorí èèyàn kún ò lè dá ṣe. Másòyìnbó ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ ẹrú rẹ̀, kí ni ìwọ fúnra ẹ ń ṣe, kí lèmi fúnra mi ń ṣe. Béèyàn bá tiẹ̀ kí mi lẹ́sẹ̀yìn kí n tó dáhùn kankan ó ti gbọ́ báyìí sí, bí n ṣe máa dẹ́ lónìí kó kí mi lóyìnbó máa pé báyìí sí, bẹ́ẹ̀ 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 lọ. Nǹkan tí mo mọ̀ tá lè ṣe ni pé kó bẹ̀rẹ̀ látọ̀dọ̀ ẹ, kó bẹ̀rẹ̀ látọ̀dọ̀ mi. Ibi ohun tá a bá bẹ̀rẹ̀, táyé bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí rí lọ́tùn lénìí lọ́la lọ́tùnla tí wọ́n rí pé ó tún padà, àwọn èèyàn bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí get used sí pé ó dàbí pé eléyìí ló tún tán àdẹ̀ máa ṣe. À ń lọ Saudi Arabia, à ń lọ Dubai, wọ́n ní wọ̀jú jàlábíà yìí lọ, ẹ ní rí wọn nínú bùbá àbí ṣòkòtò, jàlábíà yìí àti wérí wọn ni. Kán lọ sí ọ́fíìsì kò jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ, àwọn ọlọ́pàá wọn gan wọ jàlábíà. Kí wá ló ṣàwọn aṣọ títí wa? Àmọ́ nítorí bí mo ṣe sọ, ohun tán ti kó sí wa nínú làákàyè á pẹ́ kó tó jáde o. So we need to keep work. A máa fọ́ títí tá máa fi mọ́ padà sí ohun tó jẹ́ títí wa ni.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká jẹ́ kí alàgbà tó wà láàrin wa káwọn náà dá sí.
Oh, sorry. I think I want to come back to the point that the young lady mentioned about whether Nollywood can produce, we need to produce pure Yoruba. I think purity is a myth and is very much against the essence of Yoruba culture. And why do I say that? I think Yoruba is first and foremost a cosmopolitan society. It's a very modern, urban society, pre-conquest. And it has always absorbed difference, right? So the idea of pure Yoruba is a language, a culture that's always on the move, always remaking itself with different things that it encounters. Even though I understand what you're saying about the need to preserve the language, we do need to preserve the language, but we cannot expect to preserve the language in pure form. Our society has changed, it has transformed. We have experienced encounters that were prior to even European colonization, right? We have the Arabization of the continent of Yoruba land before Christianization, right? So things have changed. It means that we cannot go back to the original form. And in fact, Yoruba as a culture doesn't believe in the absolute, right? This is why we have our deity issue, okay? A culture that already has issue as its center tells you everything you need to know about why we need to guard against a quest for purity. And we must continue to speak and elevate our language, but not to the detriment of the outside of plurality. This is a culture that is extremely plural. Yeah. It's a polytheistic, polyrhythmic culture. Purity is what you give to the cultures of monotheism, right? So I think one of the things that we have to celebrate about Yoruba culture is the fact that everything that Europeans are trying to grapple with today, we already grappled with them many moons ago, right? They're trying to talk about plurality, diversity. This is at the center of what it means to be Yoruba. This is why we celebrate anomaly, like twins, for example. We say twins is an anomaly in nature. Because it's an anomaly, we must bring it closer and understand it and celebrate it, right? So let's think about when we're saying we want pure Yoruba. We can never have pure Yoruba. This is why you watch a film like Lisabi. If you're trying to look for pure authenticity, you will not find it. You will find fault with it. But if you understand it as a film that's recreating a particular moment, and if we understand that every history in the world is always a reconstruction, a remaking, then it allows us to have what you've called creative license, for us to be truthful to the origin, but also play with it, right? So we play with what we have. But the key thing is that we must not discard what we have for something else.
Yeah.
If we're going to have something else, let it be in relation to what we already have as well, in conversation with.
So, in essence, I love the fact that most of it.
Èmi máa takò wọn.
Go for it.
Never love.
Ṣé mọ̀ pé ó ní nǹkan kan tí mo máa ń sọ fún gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ṣe sọ mo ń kọ́ àwọn èèyàn lé ní ọ̀ọ́dúnrún ní Yorùbá. Mo máa ń sọ fún àwọn èèyàn wípé àìníra ẹni ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn kéré ṣùgbọ́n ó lọ́rìn gan kéèyàn má ní ara ẹ̀ òun ló ń dààmú wa. Àìníra ẹni mo wá kọ́ lóyìnbó pé identity inferiority complex nǹkan tó ń dààmú wa nìyẹn. Tó bá ṣe pé a níra wa tí èdè tá à ń fọ̀ tó yé wa a mọ̀ wípé èdè Yorùbá kọjá èdè nínú èdè Yorùbá ó kọjá èdè tá à ń sọ. Tẹ́bá ní wá ní ṣé o lè sọ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì, ṣé o lè sọ Spanish, ṣé o lè sọ Faransé, ṣùgbọ́n wá ní ṣé o gbọ́ Yorùbá. O lè sọ Yorùbá kó má gbọ́ Yorùbá. Àìlè gbọ́ Yorùbá ló ń jẹ́ ká máa sọ wípé a ní sọ Yorùbá tó yọrantí. Kò sí nǹkan ẹyọ kan tó yẹ kó sọnù nínú èdè àti àṣà Yorùbá. Tẹ́ bá sọ pé bàbá lásán bàbá ó kọjá pé kí gbogbo wa sọ pé bàbá. Kí ni bà? To cover, bà to shield. Wọ́n ní ẹyẹ bà lókùn, adìyẹ bà lẹ́yìn, ó sàbà ó bà náà ni. Tí kòkó wọ́n ní wọ́n bà kòkó. Ṣé pápákọ̀ fún yín ti bà? Ìyẹn to land, to protect, to shield, to guide. Bá to meet. Mo máa bá yín lọ́la o, máa bá yín. Ṣé mo máa bá yín? Tẹ́ bá wá sopọ̀, tẹ́ bá sọ pé bàbá. Someone that protects, that guides, that shields, that chastises, and someone you can meet to meet your needs. Ó kọjá kéèyàn kan sọ pé bàbá mi.
Àgbọ́yé.
Tẹ́ bá sọ bàbá.
Yorùbá.
Tẹ́ bá sọ bàbá. Ẹ̀yin mọ nǹkan tẹ́ ẹ̀ sọ, ẹ̀yin fẹ́ sọnù. Àwọn Gẹ̀ẹ́sì wọ́n mọ àwọn mi ò fẹ́ sọ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì nìkan. Àwọn òyìnbó yẹn wọ́n mọ nǹkan tí à ń sọnù tá a gbọ́ yìí. Àwọn tí alábàáṣiṣẹ́ mi nìyẹn. Àwọn tí wọ́n jẹ́ tó ń ṣiṣẹ́ ní tó ń wà ní Mexico, tó ń wà ní France, tó ń wà ní kìíní, tó wá gbé lọ́dọ̀ mi, òyìnbó tó wá ń kọ́ Yorùbá, tó ń gbé nílé mi, wọ́n ń gbé nílé mi funfun. Àwa táwa ń bí a gbọ́ Yorùbá tó wọn, a lè kífá, a mọ̀ kankan. Tá bá sọ pé a fẹ́ pé a lè padà sí ká sọ èdè Yorùbá tó yọrantí, a sì wà ní èrò àná. Yorùbá sọ pé ọgbọ̀n ọdún ni wèrè ẹ̀mí, ọgbọ̀n ọdún ni wèrè ẹ̀. Àwọn bàbá wa yẹn, àwọn ìyá ńlá wa tó ń gbé èdè kalẹ̀. Kò sí nǹkan tó jẹ́ àṣàdànù ní èdè Yorùbá. There's something called arbitrariness. Like, there's nothing cup about cup. There's nothing book about book. But kò sí ọ̀rọ̀ Yorùbá tí a fẹ́ sọ tí ò ní ìtumọ̀. Tẹ́ bá sọ pé ẹ̀gbọ́n, kí ni ọgbọ́n? Wisdom. Ẹ̀gbọ́n jù mí lọ. Ẹni tẹ́ bá pè lẹ́gbọ́n, ó yẹ kó gbọ́n jù yín lọ. Ẹ̀kú àgbà. Nǹkan tó jẹ́ ẹ̀gbọ́n nìyẹn. Ṣùgbọ́n gbogbo wa là ń fọ ẹ̀gbọ́n, gbogbo wa là ń sọ ẹ̀gbọ́n, ṣùgbọ́n gbogbo wa kọ́ ló gbọ́ ẹ̀gbọ́n. Tẹ́ bá gbọ́ èdè yín, ẹjọ́, tẹ́ bá gbọ́ èdè Yorùbá, ẹ ní fẹ́ fi èdè míì kún èdè Yorùbá. Ọlọ́run gbọ́. Àìgbọ́ ni Ọlọ́run gbọ́. Àìgbọ́ ni pé a fẹ́ sọ èdè. Ṣé táwọn àwọn tó wà ní China yẹn tó bá ń sọ tiwọn, ṣé wọ́n fi nǹkan míì kún wọ́n fi kún kò bẹ́ẹ̀ ń lọ sí Ìkòyí tẹ mórílé ọ̀nà Ìbàdàn ẹ bá lọ kẹ mórílé Àkúrẹ́ kẹ bọ́ sí Kogi kẹ bọ́ sí Àbújá ní dé Ìkòyí o ibi tí mò ń lọ ni wípé kò sí bá a sì fẹ́ lọ tó ibi tó ń sọ yìí la sì máa padà sí ká padà sí ẹsẹ̀ àárọ̀ ká bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ń sọ tá a bá ń ṣàṣìṣe ká máa kọ́ nínú àṣìṣe wa àwọn tí mò ń kọ́ mo máa ń sọ fún wọn mo ní ẹ lè sọ Yorùbá bí mo ṣe ń sọ Yorùbá bí èmi náà ò ṣe lè sọ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń sọ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì ṣùgbọ́n tẹ bá sọ pé bàbá tèmi sọ pé bàbá ṣùgbọ́n ṣé mo gbọ́ nǹkan tó sọ mo gbọ́ àbí ìyẹn ti tó mi torí tẹ bá sọ lọ́jọ́ kan ọjọ́ méjì ọ̀sẹ̀ kan ọ̀sẹ̀ méjì oṣù kan oṣù méjì ó máa yàtọ̀ nǹkan mi ò ṣe pé mo kúrò lọ́nà yìí o mo kàn ń sọ wípé ká yọ kúrò pé a lè padà sí ká fọ Yorùbá kó wọ́n tún ní tíní kí làṣà ṣà to pick to select nǹkan tí a ṣà bá ṣe ń kíra wa bá ṣe ń sọ̀rọ̀ bá ṣe ń hùwà èdè wa àṣà àkósójú kan àwa ní àṣà tiwa ni àwa máa ṣe ibi tí ìṣe tradition ti wá nìyẹn
àgbà onítọ́ lórílẹ̀
àbí àṣà nǹkan tá a ṣà tá à ń ṣe èyí tí a bá wá ṣà yẹn tá a ṣe yẹn àwa sọ di èèwọ̀ nǹkan tí ò wọ̀ tàbú tí ò bá wa lára mu ṣùgbọ́n tí bá sọ pé èèwọ̀ kò wọ̀ fún mi nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ ká ṣe ni wípé ká sọ èdè elédè di èèwọ̀ fún wa ká sọ dé wọ̀ bàbá ṣe fún ọdún kan ọmọ ìyá mi Ọlọ́run ó máa mọ́ra ṣé mo èmi náà ò lè sọ bí mo ṣe ń sọ tẹ́lẹ̀ báyìí rí iléèwé ẹ̀kọ́ gíga tí mo lọ aládàáni ni torí tèmi ní Covenant University náà ṣe bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ń jẹ́ ká máa wọ aṣọ tiwantiwa lọ́jọ́ àìkú torí kí ni mò ń wọ̀ aṣọ agbádá ni mò ń wọ̀ láṣù mo ní tó ẹ̀ẹ́dẹ́gbẹ̀ta jù bẹ́ẹ̀ àwọn tó ń wọ aṣọ òyìnbó wọ́n ń bá mi wọ́n máa wá fún mi lágbádá màá máa fúnyàn mò ń kó agbádá fúnyàn tó bá bá yín lára mu àwọn èèyàn bá yín bẹ́ẹ̀ bá oníbàfàjẹ gbẹgbà ẹ̀ náà máa bá fi ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ jẹ́ ká mú.
ẹ ṣeun.